unlimited drama series.
The headlight on my old Ford clicked into place with a satisfying snap. I wiped grease off my hands with an oil-stained rag, then grabbed the beer I'd balanced on the truck's bumper. The garage light cast long shadows across my driveway, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the hum of sprinklers watering the perfectly manicured lawns of Edgewood Estates. My phone buzzed. A text from Alara. "You don't need to come. My mother doesn't want you here." I stared at the screen for a long moment, then took a slow sip of beer. This after I'd just wired $450,000 to close on Zoya's mansion. The same mansion I'd been working overtime for 6 months to afford. The same mansion that was supposed to be my gift to my wife's mother. A peace offering to finally earn her approval after 15 years of marriage. I typed back, "Understood." But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something worse. I was calculating. See, here's the thing about Edgewood Estates. It's one of those places where everyone pretends their grass is greener, their cars are newer, and their marriages are happier. The McMansions sit behind wrought iron gates like fortresses, and the Homeowners Association sends passive-aggressive emails about trash can placement and holiday decoration timelines. It's the kind of neighborhood where secrets hide behind clean fences and perfectly trimmed hedges. I'd never quite fit in here. Tanner Jossman, 38 years old, ex-construction worker, turned small business owner. I built my company from nothing, started with a pickup truck and a toolbox. Now I employ 12 guys, and we handle commercial renovations across 3 counties. But to the folks in Edgewood Estates, I'd always be the help, who somehow managed to marry up. Ilara used to defend me. Back when we first moved here, she'd roll her eyes at the neighborhood gossip and tell me their opinions didn't matter. But somewhere along the way, that changed. Maybe it was when she started working at the law firm downtown. Maybe it was when her mother, Zoya Haldenor, moved back from Florida and started filling her head with ideas about what kind of man she deserved. Or maybe it was when she started staying late at the office 3 nights a week, coming home with stories about important cases and demanding clients that somehow never had names. I finished my beer and headed inside. The house was quiet, too quiet. Alara's car wasn't in the driveway, which meant she was already at the mansion, probably directing the movers and arranging furniture with her mother. Without me. The kitchen counter was covered with papers from the real estate transaction. I'd signed everything weeks ago, transferred the money yesterday. The mansion was officially Zoya's as of this morning. A 4-bedroom colonial with a 3-car garage and enough square footage to house a small army. All because my wife had looked at me with those green eyes and said, "This would mean everything to her, Tanner. To both of us." I poured another beer and sat down at the kitchen table, spreading out the paperwork. That's when I noticed something interesting. Buried in the fine print of the deed transfer was a clause I'd forgotten about, something my lawyer had insisted on including. The property required both my signature and my physical presence for the final handover. A technicality, really, designed to protect my investment. But technicalities, as I was about to learn, could be weapons. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was an envelope that had been slipped under my front door while I was in the garage. No return address, just my name, written in block letters. Inside was a hotel receipt from the Marriott downtown, room 212. Last Tuesday night, the same night Alara had told me she was working late on a deposition. The receipt was for 2 guests, and there was a lipstick smudge on the corner that definitely wasn't Ilara's shade. Attached to the receipt was a printed screenshot of text messages between my wife and someone named Rye. Alara: "Can't wait to see you tonight. T is working late again. Rye: Your husband's an idiot if he doesn't appreciate what he has. Alara: Soon he won't be my problem anymore." I read the messages 3 times, each word hitting like a hammer to the chest. Then I set the papers down and walked to my home office, where I kept the files for all my business transactions, including the mansion purchase. It took me exactly 1 hour to find what I needed: the occupancy clause, the utility transfer agreements, and most importantly, the security company contract that wouldn't activate until I personally handed over the keys. I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, requesting an immediate hold on the property transfer pending verification of occupancy requirements. The second was to the utility company, canceling the service activation until further notice. The third was to the security firm, informing them that any attempted access to the property without my authorization should be reported immediately. Then, I sent a group text to Alara, Zoya, and, after checking Alara's phone contacts, Rylan Dorsey. Property transfer on hold due to unmet conditions. Please contact my attorney for clarification. I attached the legal documents, then sat back and waited. The response was immediate. My phone started ringing, first Alara, then Zoya, then a number I didn't recognize that I assumed was Rylan. I let them all go to voicemail. Instead, I got in my truck and drove across town to O'Malley's, the sports bar, where I'd been drinking since before I could legally order. The owner, Milo O'Malley, had been my boxing coach back in high school and was probably the only person in this whole mess I could trust. "You look like someone just told you Christmas was canceled," Milo said as I slid onto a bar stool. "Worse," I said. "Someone just told me my marriage was." I filled him in on the evening's discoveries while he poured me a whiskey. Milo listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally and refilling my glass when it got empty. "So, what's your play?" he asked when I finished. "I'm still figuring that out." "Well, while you're figuring, remember this. You're smarter than all of them combined. Don't let emotion make you stupid." I drove home around midnight to find my driveway empty and my phone full of increasingly frantic voicemails. The last one was from Alara, and her voice was shaking with rage. "Tanner, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but you need to fix this right now. The movers couldn't get in. The lights won't turn on. And security threatened to call the police when we tried to use the spare key. My mother is humiliated, and I am beyond furious. Call me back immediately." I deleted the voicemail without responding. Instead, I spent the next hour researching Rylan Dorsey online. Turns out he owned a luxury car dealership on the other side of town, the kind of place that sold overpriced imports to people who needed to prove something. His social media was full of photos of himself posed next to expensive cars, usually wearing a shirt that was unbuttoned one button too many. In one photo, he was standing next to a silver Lexus with the caption, "New ride for the weekend. Some guys work hard, others work smart." I screenshotted the photo, noting the license plate number. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I ignored them all and drove to the mansion instead. The moving truck was still in the driveway, along with Alara's BMW and a silver Lexus that matched the one from Ryland's social media. I parked across the street and watched as Zoya gestured wildly at two security guards, while Ilara paced back and forth with her phone pressed to her ear. Ryland stood off to the side, looking like he was trying to figure out how he'd gotten involved in this mess. I rolled down my window and took a photo of the scene, then sent it to my group chat with a simple message: "Conditions still unmet. Try again." That's when Ryland noticed my truck. He said something to Alara, pointed in my direction, and started walking toward me with the kind of swagger that suggested he'd never been punched in the face. I started the engine and drove away before he reached the street. But I didn't go home. Instead, I stopped at a hardware store and bought a small knife, the kind used for opening boxes and cutting rope. Then, I drove back to the mansion and parked 2 blocks away. It was easy to approach the Lexus from behind. The car was parked on the street and everyone was focused on arguing with the security guards. It took me less than 30 seconds to puncture both rear tires and another 10 seconds to slip a note under the windshield wiper. "Enjoy the walk, Romeo." By the time I got home, Ryland had posted a photo of his flat tires on social media with the caption, "Some jealous loser doesn't like seeing a real man succeed. Pathetic." I commented anonymously, "Maybe your definition of success needs work." That evening, Alara came home. I was sitting in the living room, reading a book and drinking a beer, when she stormed through the front door. "How could you do this?" she demanded. "You ruined everything." My mother spent the entire day humiliated in front of her friends, And now Ryland's car's vandalized. This is insane, Tanner. I looked up from my book. Ryland? Her face went pale. I meant he was there helping us with the move. Right, helping. I closed the book and stood up. Alara, we need to talk. No, you need to fix this. Whatever legal nonsense you pulled today needs to be undone tomorrow, or I'm calling a lawyer. I walked to the kitchen and pulled the hotel receipt and text messages from the drawer where I'd left them. Funny you should mention lawyers, I said, handing her the papers. I think you're going to need one. Ilara stared at the papers in her hands like they were written in a foreign language. I watched her face go through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, panic, and finally, defiance. Where did you get these? She asked. Does it matter? Someone's obviously trying to cause trouble between us. These could be fake. I almost laughed. The hotel receipt? I called and confirmed it. Room 212, last Tuesday night. They have you on camera in the lobby with a man matching Ryland's description. She set the papers on the counter and crossed her arms. Fine. Yes, I was there. But it's not what you think. Really? What is it then? Ryland's been helping me plan a surprise for your birthday. We were meeting about a party. The lie was so ridiculous that I did laugh this time. My birthday's not for 4 months, Alara. We wanted to plan something special. In a hotel room. The bar was crowded. Right. I picked up the text messages and read them aloud. Can't wait to see you tonight. Your husband's an idiot. Soon he won't be my problem anymore. I looked up at her. That's some party planning. Her defiance cracked, just slightly. Tanner, listen. No, you listen. I stepped closer, and she backed against the counter. I spent $450,000 on a mansion for your mother. Money I earned working 60-hour weeks while you were playing house with a car salesman. And your mother doesn't want me there for the move-in? After everything I've done for this family? She just thought it would be easier. Easier for who? For you and Ryland to play happy family without me around? Tears started forming in her eyes, but I was past the point of caring. 15 years of marriage, and this was what I got. A wife who thought I was too stupid to notice her affair and too weak to do anything about it. I'm staying at my mother's tonight, she said quietly. Good idea. Tell Zoya I said congratulations on her new house. Oh wait, she doesn't have one yet. After Alara left, I poured myself a whiskey and called my lawyer. It was after 9 o'clock, but David Chen had been handling my business affairs for years and owed me more than a few favors. Tanner, what's going on with this mansion situation? I've got 3 different lawyers calling me about releasing the hold. How long can we keep it tied up? Legally? As long as the occupancy requirements aren't met. But Tanner, what's this really about? You seemed excited about this gift last week. I told him about Alara's affair and the humiliation at the mansion. David listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I liked about him. I'm sorry, man, that's rough. But you need to think carefully about your next moves. Property disputes can get messy, especially in a divorce. Who said anything about divorce? Come on, Tanner. Where else is this headed? He was right, of course. But I wasn't ready to think about divorce lawyers and asset division. I was thinking about something much more immediate. Revenge. The next morning, I drove to O'Malley's gym for my usual workout. The place was a throwback to when boxing gyms were about teaching discipline instead of selling memberships. Heavy bags hung from chains. The floor was stained with decades of sweat, and the only decoration was a collection of faded fight posters. Milo was training a kid who couldn't have been more than 16, teaching him how to throw a proper jab. When he saw me, he sent the kid to work the speed bag and walked over. You look like hell, he said. Feel worse. Want to talk about it? I told him about the confrontation with Alara and the lawyers calling about the mansion. Milo nodded and handed me a pair of gloves. Work the heavy bag while you talk. Helps you think clearer. For the next hour, I pounded the bag and laid out the whole situation. The affair, the humiliation, the lies. With each punch, I felt some of the rage drain away, replaced by something colder and more focused. So, what's your plan? Milo asked when I finally stopped hitting the bag. I'm going to make them pay. How? I'm working on it. Well, while you're working on it, remember what I taught you about fighting. Don't fight on their terms. Make them come to you, and never let emotion override strategy. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a smooth voice said, "This is Ryland Dorsey. I think we need to talk." "Do we?" "Look, I know you're upset about your wife, but this doesn't have to get ugly. Alara and I care about each other, and frankly, she deserves better than what she's been getting at home." The arrogance in his voice was breathtaking. "Is that right? She tells me you've been neglecting her for years, working all the time, no romance, no appreciation for what a special woman you married. I'm just giving her what she needs, in hotel rooms, among other places." I could hear the smirk
He texted at 2 a.m. Leave the door unlocked. You left our door unlocked for him?
Once it was
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
in his voice. "The point is, she's made her choice. You can make this easy or hard, but the outcome's going to be the same." "You're probably right," I said. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this." "Oh, I'm being very reasonable. In fact, I'm planning something special for all of you." "What do you mean?" "You'll find out soon enough." I hung up and immediately called my security company. The mansion was still under contract with them, which meant I could request additional monitoring services. For an extra fee, they agreed to install cameras at all entrances and provide me with real-time access to the feeds. Then, I called the utility companies and confirmed that all services to the mansion remained suspended pending resolution of the property dispute. Finally, I drove to Zoya's current rental house, a modest two-bedroom in an older part of town that she'd been complaining about for months. Her car was in the driveway, along with Alara's BMW. I parked across the street and waited. An hour later, Ryland's Lexus pulled up. He'd gotten his tires repaired, but I noticed he kept looking around nervously as he walked to the front door. Good. A little paranoia would serve him well. I took photos of all three cars in the driveway, noting the time and date. Then, I drove to the office supply store and had the photos printed, along with copies of the hotel receipt and text messages. That evening, I prepared 3 identical packages. Each one contained the photos, the hotel receipt, the text messages, and a typed note that read, "Thought you should know what your wife/daughter/girlfriend has been up to." The first package went to the managing partner at Alara's law firm. The second went to Zoya's sister, who lived in town and was known for her inability to keep secrets. The third went to Ryland's business partner at the car dealership. I mailed them all from different post offices across town. 2 days later, Alara showed up at my house looking like she hadn't slept in a week. "Someone sent photos to my boss," she said. "Photos of me and Ryland. My job is in jeopardy, Tanner. My career could be ruined." "That's terrible," I said. "Who would do such a thing?" "Don't play innocent with me. I know this was you." "Can you prove it?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something new in her eyes. Fear. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want my wife back. The one who used to respect me. The one who didn't lie to my face and cheat with car salesmen. It's too late for that. Then I guess we have a problem." That night, I got a call from David Chen. "Tanner, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Are you behind these photos that are circulating around town?" "What photos?" "Don't play dumb. Alara's boss called me today asking about your marriage. Apparently, someone sent him some compromising pictures. Sounds like someone's looking out for me. Tanner, listen to me carefully. Whatever you're planning, you need to be smart about it. Don't do anything that could come back to bite you in a divorce proceeding." "I'm always smart, David. That's why I'm successful. And that's why you need to stay successful. Don't let emotion make you stupid." It was the same advice Milo had given me, and it was good advice. But as I hung up the phone and looked around my empty house, I realized something important. I wasn't being emotional anymore. I was being strategic, and my strategy was just getting started. The next morning, I drove to the mansion to check on my security cameras. The feeds showed that Alara, Zoya, and Ryland had attempted to enter the property twice in the past week, but the security company had turned them away each time. More importantly, the cameras had audio, which meant I had recordings of their conversations. In one particularly interesting exchange, Zoya could be heard saying, "I don't care what it costs. Get a lawyer and force him to release the property. He's just a contractor. He can't outsmart us. In another, Rylan told Alara, your husband's more pathetic than I thought. All this drama over a house he can't even afford. But the most revealing conversation was between Alara and someone I couldn't see on camera. Cassie, I need your help, Alara was saying. Tanner's lost his mind, and I don't know how to handle this. A woman's voice responded, don't worry. I've been planning for this longer than you know. I rewound the audio and listened again. Cassie. That had to be Cassie Trent, Alara's best friend from law school. She worked at a different firm downtown, specializing in family law. I'd always thought Cassie disliked me, but I'd assumed it was just loyalty to Alara. Now, I was starting to wonder if there was something more to it. I made a note to look into Cassie's background and continued reviewing the security footage. That's when I noticed something interesting. In several of the recordings, Rylan was carrying a briefcase that he kept checking nervously. In one shot, I could see him opening it slightly, and inside were what looked like legal documents. I zoomed in as much as the camera resolution would allow, but I couldn't make out the details. However, I could see enough to know that whatever was in that briefcase, Rylan thought it was important enough to bring to every meeting at the mansion. I was starting to get the feeling that this whole situation was more complicated than a simple affair. And if that was true, then my revenge was going to need to be more sophisticated than I'd originally planned. I spent the weekend digging into Cassie Trent's background, and what I found was interesting. 5 years ago, she'd applied for a position with my company to handle our legal contracts. I'd interviewed her personally and decided she wasn't a good fit. Too aggressive, too willing to bend rules, and, frankly, too expensive for what we needed. I'd forgotten about it completely until now. But apparently, Cassie hadn't forgotten about me. A deeper dive into public records showed that she'd been involved in 3 messy divorce cases in the past 2 years, all involving successful small business owners. In each case, her clients had walked away with substantial settlements after their husbands' reputations were destroyed by carefully leaked information about alleged affairs and financial improprieties. The pattern was becoming clear. Cassie specialized in manufacturing scandals that would give her clients leverage in divorce proceedings, and Alara was her newest client. Monday morning, I called my accountant and had him freeze all joint accounts pending a financial audit. Then I called the bank and removed Alara's access to our business credit lines. Finally, I contacted our daughter's college and suspended tuition payments until further notice. By noon, my phone was ringing constantly. The first call was from our daughter, Madison, who was a senior at a private college 3 hours away. Dad, what's going on? The bursar's office says my tuition payment was declined. There are some issues with your mother and me right now. I'll get it sorted out. What kind of issues? I'd been dreading this conversation. Madison was 17, smart as a whip, and had always been closer to her mother than to me. But she deserved to know the truth. Your mother's been having an affair, Madison. We're probably getting divorced. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. That's not true, she finally said. Mom wouldn't do that. I have evidence. I don't believe you. You don't have to. But the tuition situation isn't going to change until this gets resolved. This is insane, Dad. You're ruining my life because you're paranoid about Mom. She hung up before I could respond. The second call was from Zoya. Tanner, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but you need to stop this nonsense immediately. My daughter's a good woman, and you don't deserve her. You're right, I said. I don't deserve a wife who lies to me and cheats on me. I deserve better. Alara is not cheating on you. She simply realized that she married beneath her station. Is that what you call it? I call it coming to her senses. Now release my property immediately, or I'll have you arrested for theft. Good luck with that, Zoya. Make sure to call me from jail when it doesn't work out. The third call was from Rylan. You're making a big mistake, Jocelyn. Alara's done with you, and your little property games aren't going to change that. Probably not, but they're fun anyway. You think this is funny? I think you're an idiot who doesn't understand what he's gotten himself into. What's that supposed to mean? It means you picked the wrong man to mess with. That afternoon, I drove to Ryland's car dealership. It was exactly what I'd expected. a gleaming showroom full of overpriced imports and a sales staff that looked like they'd been hired from a modeling agency. I walked around the lot for 20 minutes, taking photos and noting security camera positions. The dealership was located on a busy street with several restaurants and shops nearby, which meant there would be plenty of witnesses for whatever I was planning. But first, I needed more information. I waited until closing time, then followed Ryland's Lexus to a bar called the Copper Kettle. It was the kind of place where divorced executives went to pick up women half their age, all brass fixtures and overpriced cocktails. I sat at the far end of the bar and watched Ryland work the room. He was smooth, I'd give him that. Within an hour, he'd bought drinks for 3 different women and collected 2 phone numbers. But the most interesting part of the evening came when Cassie Trent walked in. She spotted Ryland immediately and joined him at a corner table. I couldn't hear their conversation, but their body language was intense. Cassie was doing most of the talking, gesturing emphatically, while Ryland nodded and occasionally checked his phone. At one point, Cassie pulled out a folder and showed Ryland some documents. He studied them carefully, then handed them back with what looked like a satisfied smile. Whatever they were planning, it was more than just helping Alara with a divorce. I finished my drink and left before they noticed me. The next morning, I implemented phase 2 of my plan. First, I called the Better Business Bureau and filed a complaint against Ryland's dealership, alleging deceptive sales practices and fraudulent financing. I'd done my research and found 3 online reviews from customers who claimed they'd been overcharged or sold vehicles with undisclosed problems. Then I called the state attorney general's office and reported similar concerns, providing them with the same customer reviews and suggesting they investigate the dealership's business practices. Finally, I created several fake social media accounts and began posting negative reviews of the dealership on every platform I could find. The reviews were based on real customer complaints I'd found online, so they were technically accurate. Within 48 hours, Ryland's dealership had gone from a 4-star rating to 2 stars across all platforms. But that was just the beginning. I spent the next week conducting surveillance on all 3 of my targets. I followed Alara to work and documented her meetings with Cassie. I tracked Ryland's movements and noted his regular stops at bars and restaurants. I even followed Zoya to her weekly bridge game and listened to her complain about me to her friends. What I discovered was a pattern of coordination between all 3 of them. They were meeting regularly, always at different locations, and always with Cassie present. She was clearly orchestrating something, and I was determined to find out what. The breakthrough came when I managed to get close enough to overhear a conversation between Cassie and Alara outside the courthouse downtown. "The financial records are perfect," Cassie was saying. "We can show a pattern of controlling behavior, financial abuse, and emotional manipulation. Combined with the property dispute, we'll have everything we need." "What about the photos someone sent to my boss?" Alara asked. "That actually works in our favor. We can claim he's escalating his harassment campaign. The judge will see him as vindictive and unstable. On the mansion? Once we establish that he's using the property as a weapon against your mother, we can get a court order forcing him to release it. Then we proceed with the divorce and take him for everything he's worth." I'd heard enough. That evening, I called Milo and asked him to meet me at the gym after hours. "You look different," he said when I arrived. "Harder. I feel different. Good different or bad different? Depends on your perspective." I told him about the conversation I'd overheard and my suspicions about Cassie's involvement. Milo listened while I worked the heavy bag, my punches getting harder and more focused with each revelation. "So, what's your next move?" he asked. "I'm going to give them exactly what they're asking for, which is a villain." The next day, I put my plan into motion. First, I changed the locks on my house and had new security cameras installed at every entrance. Then, I hired a private investigator to conduct formal surveillance on Alara, Ryland, and Cassie, with instructions to document every meeting and conversation. But the real masterstroke came when I realized something important about the mansion situation. The property was still legally mine until the occupancy requirements were met, which meant I could do whatever I wanted with it. So I did. I hired my construction crew to install a 10-foot privacy fence around the entire property, complete with no trespassing signs and security lighting. Then I had them set up a construction trailer in the driveway and begin what appeared to be a major renovation project. The renovation was completely fake. My guys were just moving materials around and making noise, but it looked legitimate enough to justify my continued presence on the property. More importantly, it meant that Zoya's dream mansion was now surrounded by chain link fencing and construction equipment, making it look like a work site instead of a luxury home. The reaction was immediate and satisfying. Zoya called me screaming about property damage and threatened to sue. Ilara accused me of sabotage and demanded I stop the renovations immediately. Even Rylan left a voicemail calling me pathetic and desperate. But the best part was watching them try to explain the situation to their friends and family. How do you tell people that your son-in-law bought you a mansion and then turned it into a construction zone because he found out your daughter was cheating on him? You don't. You just look foolish. And that's exactly what I wanted. Bye.